Okay. Welcome, everybody, to the second episode of the Humblecast, the only broadcast on the internet in which you can have a philosophical discussion about the Keebler Elf. To all the people who participated in the pilot episode, thank you very much. Your feedback was greatly appreciated. I decided to make another one of these before June, which is traditionally the E3 Maelstrom months. Now, me personally, I don't really care much for E3. I used to kind of follow E3 back in the 90s when it was a trade show, and it was like Nintendo and Sega. And Nintendo would come out and say, "We got Donkey Kong Country," and Sega said, "Screw that, we got Vector Man, and it's better with blast processing." And then it kind of turned into this big marketing pie chart sales figures dick contest. Pardon my French. So, with me tonight, depending on what side of the world you are, tonight or today, are my unlikely but loyal crew of misfits. Thank you very much, Pirates of Dark Water. With me tonight are the two members of my RPG party. Joe from X-Core Muffin X. Joe, how are you?
I am alright.
And with us tonight is the hero of time, Bruno from SNES Mapper. Bruno, how you doing?
Good. Thank you guys for the invite, and I'm doing good.
So, did you bring the mirror shield or the Hylian shield to the battle?
I decided to go a little bit traditional and brought the Hylian shield.
Awesome. So, tonight we're going to have a little discussion, and I'm sure this is a topic that's very close to your heart, Bruno. It's a discussion about the Super Nintendo Entertainment System, or the SNES. Now,
Yes.
I know that was your system. So tell us about the SNES. When did you get it? Was it Christmas time? Tell us your story.
Yeah, actually, it's kind of funny now that Joe is here, because my first hands-on experience with the Super Nintendo was the Super Famicom. Growing up in South America, my older brother had a Japanese classmate, and around 1991, he invited my brother to come and watch a movie. And since my parents were not at home, my brother took me to his friend's house, and because it was an action movie and I was so young, I was not supposed to watch it. So instead, they put me in this room with a Super Famicom, which I've never seen or played. And I remember just playing hours upon hours of Super Mario World, and from there, I just fell in love with the system. And I played the NES beforehand. A lot of my friends had it. Super Mario Brothers 3, Duck Hunt, all the classics. But it wasn't until I played the Super Nintendo or the Super Famicom that I really fell in love with gaming as a whole. And but it took a while for me to get one. My
Wow.
parents bought me a Super Nintendo. I think it was June of 1994, and they bought me the Super set with the two controllers and Super Mario World, along with Super Metroid. So it was a
Oh, wow.
great combo to begin with. But yeah, I was a little bit late to the party because my parents. It was expensive, growing up in South America. Prices were not exactly cheap. So it took me a while to get there, but once I got my Super Nintendo, I was a pretty happy person.
Right. So your first experience was being locked in a room with the Super Nintendo. How awesome is that?
Yeah, that was pretty awesome. I've never seen anything like it. Like Super Mario World was so colorful, and I was young. I was like around 5 or 6. So to me, it was such a step up from your, traditional Super Mario Brothers from the NES. So
Yeah.
the colors, the level design, Yoshi, it was a new thing. So I was like blown away.
Right. What about you, Joe?
I actually bought a Super Nintendo pretty quickly after it came out. So I had actually had money left over for my birthday or something, and and I was like at the shopping mall, and I saw the Super Nintendo there, and I was like, well, I gotta buy that. So I bought a Super Nintendo, and I don't think I got any games with it. I think the only game was Super Mario World when it originally came out. So, but that was like a, I knew it had come out, and I had the money, but I was at the shopping mall and I brought all my birthday money with me just in case. And then there was the Super Nintendo, so I picked that up. And
Awesome.
yeah, Super Mario World was a great experience, especially on the when that Super Nintendo came out, it was it was so much more. It is like, as Bruno said, it's a lot more colorful than pretty much. It's not incredibly more colorful than the TurboGrafx is, but it's way more colorful than the Genesis. So it's got like that kind of hype going for it.
Right.
There is a lot of things like at the time. I think a lot of people don't realize the kind of I don't know, game console pissing contest that was going on in the 16-bit generation. Like, it's the kind of thing where people talked about things that nobody talks about now. Nobody cares about these things now. But at that time, when you had your consoles, 16-bit consoles, you had everybody cared that it was 16 bits. Like, that was a huge thing. Nobody knows what that means. Nobody knew what that means. Most people still don't know what that means. But everyone really cared if your console was 16-bit or not. If you had an 8-bit console, you were in the lower echelons of your console war.
Right.
If people cared about parallax scrolling so much. Like, it wasn't a thing. Like, it wasn't a thing that people even knew the name of. It was the kind of thing where, like, look at those backgrounds, that kind of thing. And, like, people cared about the screen rotation, whatever, it's Mode-7 on the SNES.
Yeah,
but,
Mode-7.
like, it was like a huge thing. Like, when the Super Nintendo came out and that Mode-7, they showed, like, Mode-7 in the launch titles. I mean, it was a huge thing. And it was like, that was like the 1-2 punch for Nintendo fans in the 16-bit console generation until, like, Sega eventually came out with the reply on the Sega CD, able to do the rotation. It was the kind of thing where people really cared about that stuff for no apparent reason. Like, it didn't mean anything to anybody, really, but it was just like this kind of thing people could use to, like, show how their console was better. And when the Super Nintendo came out, it had it had like all the stuff that people wanted, like all the colors, all the rotation, all the parallax scrolling. So it was like kind of a big thing. It was the most powerful 16-bit system at that point when it came out. So it was the kind of thing where people would look at it and say, like, yeah, this is awesome. Everybody needs this. So the Super Nintendo does have a, pretty strong place.
It does indeed. Now, feel free to agree with me or disagree, but I stand by the statement that the Super Nintendo had, for me at least, the best system launch in the history of any game system. And I have with me an old book, it's like the SNES Strategy Guide, and as far as this list goes, at least, the Super Nintendo launched with Super Mario World, Pilot Wings, Arcana, Super R-Type, Super Ghouls and Ghosts, Super Krusty's Fun House, Super Castlevania 4, Gradius 3, ActRaiser, F-Zero, and Wings 2 High Aces. So that's a pretty good and impressive list of very different kinds of games in very different genres. You have like your card battle games with Arcana, you have Pilot Wings, a flight simulator, you have platformers, you have your spaceship shooters like R-Type and Gradius. You have Super Castlevania 4 is easily one of the best games on the system. You got F-Zero, so it has a very varied sort of launch. And let me tell you guys my story about the Super Nintendo. I actually saw one demonstrated when I was a kid in Japan. I was living in Okinawa. And there was a demonstration booth in my local mall, which was called Hamby Town. And they had two games on demonstration. They had Super Mario World and Darius. Do you remember Darius?
Who, me? Or Bruno?
Either one of you.
I remember Darius. But I didn't have it on the on the Super Nintendo. I think I had it on the, or I at least rented it on the regular Nintendo.
Hmm.
Was that a
Well,
shooter, like a shmup type
it's a
of game?
shooter. It's a
Yeah, it's a
horizontal
shooter.
shooter, and
Yeah.
all the enemies are like fish.
Oh yeah, I think I played it a long time ago.
It's a really it's a really fun game. Anyway, I got the Super Nintendo in '93, and it's actually a pretty interesting story because how many of you got video game consoles for Christmas?
I usually got video game consoles for my birthday because they tended to come out in September or so. Like it like was less of a Christmas centric launch. You know, like recently consoles tend to come out around like November or so because they want to kind of pick up on that Christmas stuff. Like the previously like the big launch month for consoles was like August and September. And they just pushed it back and back. But my birthday is like at the end of October, so always like a new console would come out, and like then it would be like 2 months later, it would be my birthday. So I would usually get consoles after then.
For
What about
me,
you, Bruno?
for me, the GameCube was the only like Christmas uh, console present that I've received. But then again, I begged to open it a little bit earlier, so it was not exactly a Christmas Day open.
Understandable. Yeah. Well, the last system that I got for Christmas, actually, a lot of people get game system for Christmas, but very few people actually got two game systems on the same Christmas. And I was one of those very lucky few because I got the Mega Drive and the Super Nintendo on the same Christmas. It was mind-blowing because I did not expect to get either of them. The thing is that my grandmother, who lives close to the border with Brazil, had gotten a Mega Drive. She secretly smuggled a Mega Drive across the border and got it for us, for me and my brother. And the thing is, in South America, and specifically where I lived when I was younger, we would go to my grandmother's house for Christmas, and if we got good report cards, we would get the best Christmas presents. Like if we got full marks, we would get awesome presents like game systems or bicycles. If we got regular, sort of, we would get lesser presents, and if we failed the course, we would get probably a lump of coal or something. But my father actually had bought us the Super Nintendo secretly, and come Christmas morning, everybody was all in the living room, and it was kind of rainy outside, so everybody was close together, and we see two boxes. And we open one of them, and it's the Sega Mega Drive, or the Genesis, which is awesome. Everybody loved the Mega Drive. And towards the end, we open the other box, and it's a Super Nintendo. And we're like, this is the happiest day of imaginable in any kid's life, where he got two game systems. So that Christmas, we played Super Mario World and Sonic the Hedgehog, and I think that's a great part of what makes me not really loyal to one system or the other, but more of I take a very holistic view on video games, in that wherever the software that I like is, I'll go to there, regardless of whether or not it's on this platform or the other platform. I think that contributed a lot to that side of the mindset. So that's my story.
That's very interesting because where I grew up, in Asunción, I didn't know a single person that had a Genesis. So that kind of, the peers around you kind of shape your, I guess, tastes in a way. But
Yeah,
like
that was more of
had a Genesis, and all my friends had, Super Nintendo, and you really had no choice. I mean, it was because if you wanted to land a game from your friend, they would have a Super Nintendo, and I never met anybody that had a Genesis.
if you live closer to the border to Brazil, like if any of you are familiar with Paraguay, there's a city, a very huge commercial city, right on the border of Brazil. It's called Ciudad del Este. And everybody had a Mega Drive there because they were Brazilian units, and it was really
Brazil.
popular because it had the bloody Mortal Kombat. So that's what made it very popular.
Brazil is like a Sega country.
It is, very much so. So when we got our Super Nintendos, which were during the lifespan of that system, which was about 8 years, 1990 to 1998, I think the last game was released. Any notable software that you folks really like? Joe?
Man, there's a lot of games on the Super Nintendo that I really enjoyed. I'm trying to think, like, I played a lot of stuff afterwards, but like I want to think about when I actually had the system as a kid. And one of the standouts for me, we'll come to some of the standouts for me. Wizardry 5 was like super good on the Super Nintendo. I really liked playing that game. And it was like a kind of game I played like for an entire summer. I just played Wizardry 5 only. And that was actually published by Capcom in the U.S. And the reason I got it actually was because it was like in a bargain bin for $10 or something when it was out, and I thought like, well, I vaguely remember playing Wizardry on the Apple II, so I'm going to buy this and hope it's similar. And it's just such a good game, and it's like such a good choice because it's the one that the story is not connected to the other stories, so it's like a kind of good jump-in position.
So it was kind of like Wizardry Gaiden.
Yeah, not really though. I mean, there is sort of a connection from going onwards, like 5 and 6 and 7. I mean, it's not really, but like there's a vague connection between those two, whereas it just doesn't have any connection to 1, 2, 3, or 4. So, yeah, that game was like a big one for me, and of course Shadowrun was like a game I played a ton also. I've beaten that game, I don't even know how many times, 20 or 30 times. And yeah, that was a great game. I played that so much as a kid, but like, and the funny thing is like I had the SNES in my living room, and I had that game in the system, and I left it overnight or something, and one of my dogs at the time chewed the cartridge, and like there was like a huge gaping chew hole in it. Like it was like chewed to the point where like both sides of the cartridge were like just thin chewed looking things, and they were separated so you could see inside the cartridge, but it still worked. So like even though like my actual cartridge is like got all these tooth marks and is all like split, I still have it somewhere, and it still works. That Shadowrun, but Shadowrun is probably one of my favorite games on the Super Nintendo actually. But I have a bunch of the other ones that everybody talks about. I had both Final Fantasies. I had, of course, your Super Mario, and I'm trying to remember what else. Romance of the Three Kingdoms 3 and 4 were games I spent tons and tons of time in that, playing with friends, playing alone. That was a really good series, especially on the Super Nintendo because it didn't have any load times.
Oh yes.
Because you could actually get Romance 4 on the PS1, and I did, but like, actually I think I had it on the Saturn. But like, having it was, playing the Super Nintendo version. Like, obviously the PS1 and Saturn versions looked better, but they had load times, whereas the Super Nintendo one didn't. So we ended up playing the Super Nintendo one way more, just because it was load free.
Right.
But those are probably some of my best games the games I played the most on the Super Nintendo as a kid.
Right, Super Nintendo cartridges. They're dog-proof.
As long as the board doesn't get eaten, you're probably fine.
What about you, Bruno?
pretty much every first-party Nintendo title. Super Mario World, obviously, which is my all-time favorite platformer. Then A Link to the Past, obviously, loved that game. Super Metroid, the Donkey Kong Country trilogy, Star Fox, F-Zero, Yoshi's Island. What was that game? What's it? Uniracers, the one with the
Unicycles.
the unicycle or whatever.
Uniracers, yeah.
Yeah, and then a couple of the licensed games, like the Konami games, Batman Returns. That was a good beat 'em up. Bikers, Mice from Mars, which was like an isometric racing game. It was pretty fun.
That was really good.
Yeah, you played that one?
Yes. I still remember I used to play as Vinny. And he's like,
me too.
all right!
Yeah.
The digitized
was like
was really good.
He was like the hardest one to like master, but once you like knew how to handle him, he was like definitely the best.
Yeah, definitely.
And oddly enough, I think the Super Nintendo is, well known for being like a pretty good RPG machine. But like I said, growing up, you're kind of influenced by your peers, and none of my friends really were, into RPGs. I remember the school that I went to. For some reason, there were like a lot of Korean people in my school growing up. And they were into RPGs, and we just couldn't figure it out. Why are they so much into those games? We couldn't figure it out. The turn-based battle system, we thought it was really slow, so we just stuck to our, action, platformers, sports games, fighting games. Oh, and by the way, I have a huge shout out to Street Fighter 2 Turbo. That game,
Yes.
so many hours into that game is not even funny.
Yes. For me, one game that really stood out when it launched, when the Super Nintendo launched, was Super R-Type. And Super R-Type is a game that I played so much. I don't know how many hours I must have sunk into that game, but I played that game so much. Because up to that point, I had only played R-Type on the Game Boy, and I had never seen the R-Type arcade machine. We didn't have that in Okinawa, and I never saw it around. It wasn't until I went to Tokyo, like on a trip, that we actually saw the R-Type arcade machine. But going from the Game Boy to the Super Nintendo, playing R-Type, you can imagine the huge leap. Everything was really nice, and R-Type is one of my favorite games, actually. And IREM is actually one of my favorite developers. And they have a little mascot, the little dragonfly that's right beside the IREM logo. Have you ever seen that, Joe?
Yeah. It's sad that IREM isn't making games anymore, but they they have a huge list of games that are quite good. R-Type is actually my favorite shooting series. R-Type, but also like they did, what's it called? My mind has blanked. What is that?
They made many. They made Kickle Cubicle on the family computer, NES. They made Metal Storm. They made The Guardian Legend, which is one of my favorite NES games. They made lots of games.
They made Deadly Towers. But they also they made a Kung Fu, that Kung Fu Master.
Yeah.
That game was one of the big Nintendo launch games. Also big in the arcade. What else? They've done like the survival series of games, Zettai Zetsume Toshi, which is, they have all different names in English, but Raw, Danger, and I don't remember the English names. Raw, Danger, and something.
Yeah. They also made
Disaster.
Steambot Chronicles.
Oh yes, that's right.
You
They did make Steambot Chronicles. It's like Bumpy Trot or whatever.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, we actually have several members of this little, I would call it like a little circle, that are getting into the Super Nintendo. One of them is actually Casual Play, Eric, which, shout out to Eric Casual Play. And he's actually building his Super Nintendo collection. And I'd like to know if you guys have one recommendation. I'm going to recommend one game, and I'll let you guys recommend one game. And the game that I will recommend is for anyone who's building their Super Nintendo collection. If you can find it at a good price, Illusion of Gaia. Illusion of Gaia is from Enix. It was published by Enix, and it was developed by Quintet, one of my favorite RPG publishers, which I don't know what happened to them. I don't know if they're still around or not. But Illusion of Gaia is such a good game. It's very unique. It's an incredible work of art in 16-bit form, and I would put it above Squaresoft games in terms of quality. And at the time, it was pretty overlooked because NX games were not really that popular, never as popular as Square games. But Illusion of Gaia is a game that combines sort of like a historical, archaeological exploration with... It's kind of difficult to define it, but if you're listening to this, Eric, and you want to see a nice review on Illusion of Gaia, you can check out the review by Joey Rue on Clan of the Grey Wolf. He made a really good review on Illusion of Gaia. It's a really, really good game, and you really should have it. So, Bruno, any recommendations for SNES games?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm assuming. Did he just start? I'm assuming he picked up like the usual suspects.
Yep.
First party games and stuff. There's a very underrated racing game that I enjoyed it quite a lot when it got released. It's a first party title actually. It's Stunt Racer FX.
Stunt FX Racing, yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I really enjoyed that game. It made a really good use of the FX chip that was also used in Star Fox and Yoshi's
Vortex.
Island, Vortex, exactly. And it was a pretty challenging. Like it was like a cute kind of looking racing game, but it was pretty like challenging and tough. And for some reason, it got pretty overlooked. The game ran like crap, though. I mean, the frame rate was pretty terrible. It was very demanding on the hardware, but yeah, I guess I would throw that game as my recommendation because it's a really fun game. It's challenging, but I think it's severely overlooked.
What about you, Joe?
For me, I think I would recommend. I mean, obviously Shadowrun. That's one everybody should get. But
Good one.
I want to say Super Ghouls and Ghosts is a game like on the Super Nintendo that you shouldn't go without. For me, it kind of encapsulates the platformer craze of the 16-bit generation. But like for me, it's easily my favorite platformer. It's punishing but rewarding. It's got a lot of cool stuff going on. The music is great. It's weird because like I think a lot of my you guys know that I like hard games, but the thing is like when I was a kid, I had a Nintendo, and one of the first games I got for my Nintendo was Ghosts and Goblins, and it was like the kind of thing that shaped the way I played games, because like it's the kind of thing where it's stupid hard, but I just played it so much that I got used to it and got good at it. So eventually, like I beat that game, and it was the kind of thing where like from there I've kind of had that kind of feeling where I want to play these games that are hard because it gives me that same kind of feeling as when I played Ghosts and Goblins on the original Nintendo, and I think Super Ghouls and Ghosts really did that too. It does a really good job of being difficult but being rewarding and fun. So if you were going to get any type of platformer, and if you're collecting for 16-bit stuff, you probably should get some platformers only because it's like the golden age of platformers at that point. So if I would suggest that game specifically because for me it's like the pinnacle of platformers.
Very good recommendation indeed. Yeah, Super Ghouls and Ghosts is a really good one. It's I think it is actually my favorite of the Ghouls and Ghosts or Ghosts and Goblins or Makaimura games.
Yeah, I never know the name
so nice.
of those in English. I always forget, like, is it Ghouls and Ghosts or is it Ghosts and Goblins because it changed? And I could be saying them backwards, and in my head, I think of them as Makaimura. So it's kind of like, I just don't know, because the name is consistent throughout all the Japanese titles, but it's not in the English titles, so I always forget what is the real name.
Yeah.
But
no, you got it right. It's Super Ghouls and Ghosts. It's Ghosts and Goblins on the NES, Ghouls and Ghosts on the Mega Drive, and Super Ghouls and Ghosts on the Super Nintendo.
Is that where they stopped?
No, there's one on the
They
PSP.
made one more Ultimate Ghosts and Goblins.
Yeah, that game is really good actually. If you get the Japanese one, there are 2 releases in Japan, and there's like Ultimate Ghouls and Ghosts came out on the PSP in English, but it's kind of weird in that it's more Metroidvania, I guess, than Ghouls and Ghosts, because you have to like collect items and you have to backtrack and do all this stuff, and it's a good, but it doesn't feel like Ghouls and Ghosts so much because you have to, you're kind of like doing this exploration that isn't normally in the series. But what they did in Japan was, like, people complained about it so much that Capcom made an updated version called what is it? Goku Makaimura Kai, which is like revised Ultimate Ghouls and Ghosts. And what it does is it includes the entire original game plus a remixed version that makes it play exactly like a standard Ghouls and Ghosts game. And that version is so good. It's like another like classic entry into the series, and it makes it feel like so much better than playing the one that they originally put out, because it really feels like it should be part of the series as opposed to only the PSP one that came out in English, which it still feels like part of the series, but it feels like a weird kind of offshoot because of the way like the basic functions of the game change. But that Japanese version, so good.
Yeah, I thought that PSP game was like a collection of like the Super Nintendo and the NES games for some reason. I don't know.
Nope,
No,
it's a new game.
It's an entirely original game. Right. So, Makaimura, that's a really good one. Anyway, on to the next topic, which there's one game on the Super Nintendo that I actually like very much, and I would recommend to anyone who likes the Looney Tunes or the Animaniacs, which are the derivation of the Looney Tunes, and it's, as its name implies, Animaniacs on the Super Nintendo. That's a really good sort of Double Dragon-esque 3-plane platformer in which you control the Warner brothers and sister. And it's not a very long game, but you have to explore the entire levels to find pieces of a script to get a secret ending. And that's one thing that I really like about the Super Nintendo and the Sega Genesis era, is all the licensed games from cartoons at the time. Did you ever have an experience with those?
Yeah. I played the Animaniacs game. That was really good. And did you play the Tiny Toons game, the one by Konami?
Yes, I play the Tiny. I prefer the Mega Drive version of Tiny Toons, but I did play the SNES version too, and it's actually really good.
Yeah, that was a really fun one. And then obviously Biker Mars from Mice from Mars, the isometric racing game. That's another licensed, I guess, cartoon game. And then
Yes.
they had a couple of other Looney Tune games. The names are escaping me, but they also had like a basketball game that kind of copycat the NBA Jam.
Is it
Um,
Space Jam?
no, I was called like Looney Tunes. Like I forgot the name. I remember I rented it and it was pretty fun. It was like an NBA Jam type of game. Um, that was another good one.
Right. Well, the next topic is about video game characters in popular culture, and vice versa. Characters from television like personalities in video games, and why it's important. And one thing that I can say about that particular era is that there were a lot of personalities, such as, say, Buster Douglas, which is a sports. He was actually one of the boxers who beat Mike Tyson. Um, there were personalities like Michael Jackson, Joe Montana, Pat Riley, the Looney Tunes, cartoon licenses, who made their way onto video games. But the opposite is also true. One of the most popular characters in the early 80s, and one that made a craze in the early 80s, was Pac-Man. And he was one of the most popular characters, I would say. I would say he was the first really popular video game character, was Pac-Man. He had his own cartoon show. Do you remember the cartoon show, Pac-Man?
I do. I used to watch that actually on the USA Network, and there's actually a
That was
Pac-Man. There's a Pac-Man Christmas special too. You can watch. You can actually still watch it on YouTube, I think. But I remember the Pac-Man show. It was pretty good actually. There were a couple other cartoons of video game characters at the same time. I mean, there was a Donkey Kong cartoon, and there was a Q*bert cartoon, I believe, or possibly Q*bert just came out in some other cartoon. I don't actually remember that one, but I have a vague memory of there being a Q*bert cartoon.
Hey, it's Q*bert.
Yeah,
Sorry.
that is. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. That was Saturday Supercade. And they
Yes.
had Pitfall Harry, they had Q*bert, they had Donkey Kong Frogger, and Donkey Kong Jr. Why do I remember it? Because I love that show. Yeah.
This is this I'm guessing these are too old for you, Bruno. Like
Well,
it seems they're like I'm thinking these are on at like 1983 maybe. Like it's not. I think that's when they were originally on, unless they've replayed them later.
the thing is, growing up in Paraguay, I don't think they ever showed any of those cartoons. Not that I remember, at least. I know, the Mario Brothers had a cartoon series, Zelda, Donkey Kong, Sonic, but I don't recall them being broadcast. It was all like anime when I was growing up. So, yeah, I never got to watch those, but I can redeem that. I recently bought they have it for really cheap on Amazon, like the entire Mario Brothers cartoon series, which I've heard is pretty terrible, but it
Wait,
was pretty
wait.
cheap.
The Super
That's
Show,
very
is that
debatable.
the
What's
Mario
that?
Brothers Super Show? Is that what you get?
I think so. Yeah, it's like a horrible looking cartoon version of the.
It has like Captain Lou Albano in it. I mean, there's live action parts with people, right?
I'm not
Or
sure.
no?
I haven't watched it yet. I bought it like a month ago or 2 months ago, and I haven't popped but the cover doesn't have like action or like real people in it, so I'm not sure if it's the same series or not.
It probably is, because that was the most popular. That one, and there were two series that came later, which were a bit shorter. The Adventures of Super Mario Bros. 3 and Super Mario World, which was only one season. But the Super Show was the most popular.
But like, wasn't Super Mario 3 part of the Super Show? Like, didn't they play the? I mean, those cartoons weren't like a full half hour. They were like 10 minutes or 15 minutes or something, and they played them on the Super Show. At least for the original one.
Mario 3 was a separate show. It came later, in 1990, if I'm not mistaken. Or no, 89, because it launched, the show was on before the game launched, which was weird. But
okay, I have it here on my hands. It says it's the Super Mario World, the complete series.
Oh yeah, that's
okay.
the last one. Yeah, that's the Super Mario World cartoon.
Yeah, that's the one I got. It's like super cheap.
Yeah.
And I also got here, let's see, The Legend of Zelda, the complete season.
Okay.
Man.
I'm sorry, but I have to do this. Hey, excuse me, princess.
Yeah.
I've
That's all you need.
Yeah.
That sounds really bad. Almost all of those cartoons were, the Nintendo ones at least, were really bad. Captain N the Game Master, for example, if you've ever seen that, like, I'm talking animation-wise, those cartoons are awful, and usually the voices are awful, and the stories are awful, and yeah, it's in general they're just bad. But like, Captain N is like the epitome of that, because it doesn't have just Nintendo characters, it just has characters that were popular on Nintendo. So some of them are Nintendo characters, like you have Kid Icarus, but you have like Mega Man and Simon Belmont, and plus Captain N, who's just random. But
Yeah, and Bayou Billy.
yeah, and Game Boy.
Yes. The less said about that, the better.
And the main villain is like Mother Brain, and the eggplant wizard from Kid Icarus, and what's King Hippo from Punch Out. But man,
yes.
no, it like, if that sounds bad, it's even worse because of the voice acting, because like Mega Man like prefaces everything he says with Mega. And like Kid Icarus talks in like this weird kind of Kid Icarus pig Latin, where he adds icus to the end of like words for no reason. It's like, it's seriously
like Latin.
Yeah, it's kind of like that. It's like he'll be like, "That's too badicus, princess," or something. Like, it doesn't make any sense. But he just yeah. So
Yeah.
it's really bad. But then like they added the Game Boy as a character, and it's just like a anthropomorphic Game Boy. It's like a square with a face on the screen, and it's big and it talks, and it's obviously like marketing for the Game Boy. It's
Shameless
like
plug.
It's like the most transparent marketing for anything you've ever seen. And that show, man, it's like, I would recommend watching it just because of how like shameless it is for like pretty much everything. But man, it's the kind of thing where I'd watch it probably because I have nostalgia for it. But like, even with nostalgia blinders on, it's like terrible. It's just a bad show.
It sounds sounds so bad that I really need to watch it.
Yeah, it's so
Yeah,
bad
that's the
it's
thing.
good.
Like, it is so bad that you really should watch it, because you'll recognize a lot of the characters, but their personalities are nothing like they are in the games, and then they're all weird. Like have you ever seen Little Shop of Horrors, the movie with like Rick Moranis, the later one? The voice of Audrey 2 in that movie, the giant man-eating plant, is also the voice of Mother Brain in the Captain N show. So they sound really different. They sound really the same, but even though like, and the characters are pretty much the same character. It's weird. So it just gets worse and worse. Like, the more I explain it, the worse it'll sound, and the more you'll probably want to look it up and watch some episodes, because it's like you'll be like, after a while you'll stop believing that I'm telling the truth about how bad it is, and then you'll actually watch it and you'll be like, nope, 100% correct. It was awful.
Wow.
Yeah, I think the best show of that particular era is actually Sonic the Hedgehog, because they actually had a plot, they developed characters, and they got top-notch actors to do the voices. And
Jaleel White.
no, I'm referring to Jim Cummings.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say, Urkel is your top-notch actor.
No. Actually, I give Sonic the Hedgehog and Sega a lot of credit because they kind of started out as a sort of humbled company, which later they were. I see them kind of like the plucky ones because they went up against the monolith that was Nintendo, and actually the Mega Drive, the Genesis, was actually their gateway into success because I don't know if you remember in Christmas 1991 and 92, the Genesis was actually the hottest thing to own in those particular years with Sonic the Hedgehog. And for a company like Sega, which had pretty much less than 10% of the market share, to just suddenly grab up everything with that one character, I really give them a lot of credit. And even today, I give them a lot of credit because they don't really give up. They're one of the few video game companies or entertainment companies that still have a cartoon show. At least they're trying to have a cartoon show going with the new Sonic Toon or Sonic Boom. I have not watched it yet, but I've heard that it's actually pretty good. I should try to get on that. Unfortunately, it's not broadcast here, so I'll have to see if I can find a way to watch that. But actually, I think that Sega is one of the companies that I remember the best for having quality shows. At least that particular show at the time. And also, Sega is one of the companies that pioneered having celebrities or sports celebrities in their games to sell a game. Like, do you remember the early Mega Drive games were like Pat Riley basketball? Yes, Joe Montana. Joe Montana's. I'm not sure if I ever told you this, but I actually once met Joe Montana when I was I was with my parents in Baltimore, and I actually met Joe Montana, and I got his autograph, and that autograph is still somewhere around there in my house. But he's actually a really swell guy, and all I can think about is you're the guy from the Sega game. Because I wasn't really into
He was
sports.
a big selling point for the Genesis in those initial commercials. In the Genesis Does What Nintendo Don't commercials. He was he was in them. He was in those commercials because Joe Montana Football was one of the games that was they were pushing as like, you know, one of the hype new games for the 16-bit generation or whatever.
Indeed. And I think that was important to get. Sega was one of the pioneers, in my eyes, to get video games kind of into the mainstream. Not only with celebrities like Michael Jackson and Joe Montana, but with cartoon characters, because one of the launch titles for the Mega Drive and for the Genesis was Castle of Illusion, starring Mickey Mouse, which in Japanese is Aidobu Mickey Mouse, or I Love Mickey Mouse, Fushigi no Ojo Daibo Ken, which is the Great Adventure in the Great Mysterious Castle, if I remember correctly. And
Yeah, that's good.
I remember when the Mega Drive was going to launch, Al Nielsen from Sega was demonstrating that on television, the Mickey Mouse game. And that, I don't even like Mickey Mouse, but that little program that he showed, that made me want to play that game, because it looked like you were playing a cartoon.
I
And
didn't know that launch day title. That game is pretty good looking.
Castle of Illusion, that's a really, really good game.
Yeah.
There are two, actually, and that was developed by Sega, Castle of Illusion. And the second one is Donald Duck, Quackshot, starring Donald Duck, which is Airobu Donardak in Japanese, and I don't remember the subtitle. But I remember seeing Airobu Mickey Mouse when I was young, and I really wanted to play that.
We got some bad news for you, though.
Yeah.
In the comments, somebody said Sonic Boom is really bad. That's a Kishoro guy in the comments.
Well, I would have to see it myself because I've heard good things, and I've heard bad things about Sonic because he's Sonic. But I'll have to watch it myself.
I don't know about the cartoon. I've never watched it, but those games got. I've seen some horrible videos about those games where like it's just like a horrible glitch fest.
Well, I really haven't gotten around to that.
Bruno, did you get those games? Did you get Sonic Boom for something?
Nope.
Okay, I was thinking
I got the other one, Sonic Lost World, which is the first one they got for the Wii U, but I think Nintendo got screwed because didn't they sign like a exclusive deal with Sega to release 3 Sonic games? One of them is Lost World, which is it's a good game, but the other 2 are like Sonic Boom for the 3DS and the Wii U, and they're both pretty terrible.
Yeah, I guess I'm thinking of Lost World for you because I remember somebody in the chat was saying that they got a Sonic game for the Wii U, and I just think like if someone's buying something for the Wii U, it's probably you. So
I think Senkai bought Sonic Boom. I think it was.
Oh
him.
Yeah, that's right. That's true. I think that is him.
I don't know why, but
yeah, that's weird. It's true though. Man, those Sonic games really did kind of. I think that is they did kind of screw Nintendo there. But man, yeah, I think it's weird because I think with cartoons and games, for example, with the Super Nintendo, you guys mentioned a lot of those games, but I've never played any of those games. I think I'm older than you guys by a few years. But when the Super Nintendo came out, I was like in junior high, like 8th grade maybe, so like almost high school. And I finished, and then when like most of that stuff was coming out, all those games like that were related to cartoons, like I was in high school by that point. I wasn't really watching cartoons, so I didn't play like any of those Disney games or any of those like tie-in games to cartoons like Animaniacs and stuff like that. I just didn't play that stuff. So I think like when you're saying like, oh, the Sonic cartoon was good, I think like it was really poorly animated, and like the backgrounds were like solid color space. I thought like it's just poorly animated. I didn't really watch it that much though, so I don't know if the stories or characters were good, but I just remember how poorly animated it was. But I wanted to ask, did Sega make any other cartoons? Were there any other Sega cartoons besides Sonic?
Not that I'm aware of. There were some attempts from I think Atlas. Atlas has a character called Quirk, the tomato. On the Game Boy. I think they tried to turn that into a cartoon, but it didn't really take off. And another one that tried to turn into a cartoon was Bubsy.
Yeah.
I don't think we have to say anything more.
Yeah. Bubsy actually was a pretty popular cartoon. I want to say more popular than the games were, in the sense that like it was on for kind of a long time.
Not that I thought that was canceled after 1 episode.
No, I'm pretty sure that was. Maybe I'm thinking of something else. No, I'm pretty sure Bubsy was on for a while.
You might be thinking of Earthworm Jim. Earthworm Jim went on for at least a season.
I'm going to look up the Bubsy cartoon, because I swear it was on for a long time.
Right. Well, while you do that, our next topic here is it's something that I'm actually kind of curious about because I don't have a family of my own, but my brother has family, and I have a nephew who is very much into games, and he's very much into. He has exceptionally good taste as far as games go, and I try to get him a present every year for his birthday. But last year I wanted to get him a copy of Ark Rise Fantasia on Wii, but I ended up getting something else because when I pulled up Ark Rise Fantasia, it was no less than $120. And that is ridiculous because I bought that game for $14 when nobody cared about it. And I was the only person at that time in like 2009 that praised this game and said, this game is amazing and you really should pay attention to it. And I guess somebody must have caught on, and the price gouging started. Now, until somebody proves me wrong, I'm going to stand by the statement that it's my fault that that game got so expensive. But the topic that I would like to cover is the seventh generation is over. Like the Nintendo Wii, PlayStation 3, Xbox 360 generation is pretty much over for the most part. Which games do you think will become the Panzer Dragoon Saga of the 7th generation, or that rare and expensive game that came out towards the very end in limited quantities, and that is exceptionally good? Now, I'm going to rule out one because it's the obvious answer, and that's Xenoblade Chronicles.
Damn it.
So, besides Xenoblade Chronicles.
Well, even Xenoblade, GameStop, all of a sudden they magically found like 3 warehouses full of Xenoblade like discs. So I don't know, like here in Florida at least, like if you walk into a GameStop, it's pretty easy to find a copy of Xenoblade as of now. And the same deal with the Metroid Prime trilogy. They did a reprint of that game. It doesn't come with the steel case or anything like that, but that's kind of like an ongoing trend that's happening here. Like this non-announced reprints like Xenoblade Chronicles, the Metroid Prime trilogy, and other games like Radiant Historia, The World Ends With You. Like all of a sudden you see the prices drop down considerably, and for some reason they're reprinting them in small quantities. So it's kind of hard to judge nowadays what's going to be reprinted and what's not going to.
I'm going to throw mine out there, and my guesses are that those rare and expensive games that came out towards the very end, they're going to be very good, and that eBayers will be asking an arm and a leg for 10 years from now. The first one is Ark Rise Fantasia, which is already getting expensive. The second that I personally experienced is Valkyria Chronicles 2 on the PSP, and Sands of Destruction on the Nintendo DS. And Sands of Destruction is a game that almost nobody heard about, but for some reason you can't get it for less than $90 now. And it's a Sega game. It's a Sega RPG from pretty much the same team that made Xenogears. You remember Xenogears?
Yeah.
So it's that's for the Nintendo DS.
Man, this is a tough question because I don't actually know the prices for any games. It's so rare that I look up game prices that I honestly don't know how much stuff is expensive or not for the last gen. Like, man, I guess I'm gonna guess that stuff like Lost Odyssey is gonna get really expensive. But in all honesty, I don't know because like that game is super cheap in Japan. It's never gonna go up in price. But like, it seems like something that people will catch on to later on as like a kind of, hidden gem or whatever. Even though everybody kind of knows it right now. In 10 years, when people are kind of out of the generation to the point where like they never played any of those games, like that's a game I think people will go back to and play. And I think there's going to be stuff like that's super cheap right now that's going to go way up later on, I think, only because people right now are like, they're like 6 years old and they haven't played these games, and like in 10 years they'll be 16 and they'll want to play like more stuff like that, I think. Probably Binary Domain will be much more sought after than it is now. I don't know. I'm trying to think of stuff that would have a low print count. It's hard. There's probably a lot of stuff on the Wii that will be like that, just because a lot of people just kind of wrote it off afterwards. So I'm guessing stuff like Deadly Creatures and
A Boy in His
probably
Blob.
Boy and His Blob, and some of the horror games I think are already going up in price. But yeah, it's hard to think of stuff right away. I can think of a lot of games in Japan that are like going to be super expensive. R-Type Tactics 2, Wizardry 3 on the PSP. All those on the PSP actually, but yeah, there's a bunch of shooters and stuff that will be expensive. But other than that, it's hard to think of stuff that everybody will have played or has access to that will also be expensive, because right now I just don't know. I just don't look at prices that often.
Right.
So I'm going to go out on a limb and say Hulk Hogan's wrestling game for the Kinect. There it is.
Yes. Hulk Hogan. So, I have a question for you, Bruno. Would you buy an amiibo for $35?
No. Maybe. Well, no, not really.
No.
I overpaid for one of out of all the amiibos that I have. I did pay a little bit more for one that I particularly missed out, and that's Pit from Kid Icarus. I basically had to pay twice, so I had to pay $25 because Best Buy, they screwed up my pre-order, and it just so happens that Pit was one of the rare ones, so they were never ever able to fulfill my order again. So I really wanted Pit, so I had to fork $25 for him. But other than that, so far I got all of them for the standard price.
Right. Well, would you pay $35 for Mario?
Nope.
No, because that's the list price over here where I'm living. Amiibos are $35 a piece.
That's insane.
That's insane. And that's one thing that a lot of people, like in the United States or in Japan or in Europe, they actually don't know how difficult it is for people in third world countries or in South America or in Africa. They don't know how difficult it is for us to get hands on games sometimes, because the games are many times they're not legally imported, so they have to come in by contraband or other shady ways, and the people really rip you off. And that's one thing that I would like to discuss. The challenges of being a video game player when you live in a country in which they're not widely available. Bruno, tell us about your story.
Yeah, the first hurdle is that there is no legal representation of any of the companies there. There's no Sony, PlayStation, or Nintendo official distribution or retail centers. So you basically have to, at least when I was living in Paraguay, it was extremely hard. If you wanted a game on release date, that's impossible. You would have to just go every day to the game shop and ask, hey, is this game out yet? And sometimes they will be out in 2 or 3 days, and sometimes you will have to wait 1 week, 2 weeks. And I remember going every day to Galeria Central, which is in downtown Asunción.
Yeah.
I went every single day to ask if the Resident Evil remake for the GameCube was out, and the lady was starting to get pissed because I was so anxious to get that game. But that's a reality. You never knew when the games were coming in, or being released, and the prices. It's another big problem because you have to pay more. Obviously, Nintendo 64 games were like around $70 to $80.
Yeah.
On the other hand, if you were more into like the PlayStation games, you had the cheapo discs sold on the street. A lot of piracy going on in South America, so you were able
Yeah.
to buy PS1 and PS2 games for like $2 or $3. But for Nintendo systems, I guess it was kind of hard to do piracy, and you had to pay $70-$80 for a game. And another thing also, I like to use this medium here to say fuck you to the post office employee that stole my Cruis'n USA cartridge that was sent to me as a gift from my uncle and my aunt from here. They lived in the U.S. and in 1997 they sent a package for my birthday with Cruis'n USA for the Nintendo 64, brand new. And some asshole on the post office stole it. So that's another thing. Like, when people were sending you stuff like games, they were being stolen, and release dates were off, and prices were so high that it was extremely difficult.
Yes, that's terrible. I remember when my brother left home. His parting gift when he was going to the United States to join the military, one of his last parting gifts was The Legend of Zelda Majora's Mask. And if I remember correctly, he paid $95 for that.
Wow.
And I still have that cartridge. I love Majora's Mask. It's one of my favorite games, and it holds a really special place for me because it was the present for when my brother left home. But I remember the people. If you wanted to get games from Galeria Central, they were expensive. But if you wanted to get games from other places like the shopping centers, like Shopping del Sol, other shopping centers,
Forget about it.
Those games were not just overpriced, they were highway robbery. But the thing is that at least you had some form of guarantee that if something didn't function, like they were legally represented. There's a computer shop in Paraguay called CompuMarket. They have legal representation and they have liability. So if you have some problem, you can take your products back. But the trade-off is that you have to pay several times more for that service. And that's one thing that's very difficult because I have several games, Nintendo 64 games. I have many of them, and the last video game system that my parents or my father ever bought me was a Super Nintendo. When I was like about 95, when I was like 12 years old, the Sega Saturn was coming up, and I really liked the Sega Saturn. I looked at it, and this is the system I would really like. And to this day, the Sega Saturn is my favorite game system of all time. And I asked for the Sega Saturn for Christmas one year, but he said that you're getting kind of old to be playing video games. You should be doing other things. So from that point on, I had to procure my own money to buy my own games. So in a sense, it kind of helps me appreciate the games that I have more because I had to fight tooth and nail, and I had to battle those dreadful Korean merchants that rip you off and treat you like crap. There is no customer service at all. The Koreans look at you as if you're a piece of shit, and you're the ones that are giving them money and buying their crappy-ass contraband products. Sorry if I'm getting heated, but I just remember this stupid Korean that lived in a shopping center close to my house, and I want to rip his face off, but I digress. But it was a big challenge in South America. Nowadays, it's a little bit easier because you have courier services, and you can buy things directly from the United States, and you don't have to deal with this Korean riffraff. Pardon me for generalizing, but Koreans are some of the worst merchants ever. But the thing is, you kind of miss that experience of going out to the shop and buying something. There's something special about going out and seeing the shelves of games and picking out a game. It's an experience that's difficult to explain, but you don't really get that when you're ordering something from Amazon and getting it through the mail. It's something that's kind of lost. And it's one thing that Americans are very fortunate to still have, like Best Buy or Target or Walmart or game shops in which you can go and look at the games on the shelf, and if you want to buy a cheap used game, you can buy used games. If you want to buy new games, you can go ahead. And it's something that in other countries you don't have the luxury of. And it's something that I always tell people in the United States, you should appreciate what you have, because if you're abroad, many things that you take for granted in the United States or in Japan or in any like first world country, we don't have those in South America for the most part. So be grateful for what you have. And that's my little speech on that subject.
Yeah, I agree. It's in a way, it was kind of fun experiencing that. I know it may sound like a masochist thought, but yeah, growing up it was really tough, and like you said, it made you appreciate. Whenever you went to the shop and bought a game, you really had to like the game. Like even though sometimes you had to force yourself to like the game, it was that's the way we had to do things back then.
Right. And I think one of the issues that I had in the United States, and sometimes I have it here, not very often, but the employees know jack shit about the product that they're selling. And in the United States, I once went with my brother to GameStop. I never shop at GameStop, for the record, but I went with him just to look around. And the employees were these teenage, just mealy-mouthed brats who knew practically nothing about what they were selling. And the information that they gave was actually misleading. And that's the problem I have when you hire people. And I don't really get involved with like the political side of video games or these YouTubers that are all about the political and business side of it. Personally, I find that the more you get involved into the political ramifications and the economics of the medium, the less enjoyable it becomes. And that applies for pretty much anything, Hollywood and professional wrestling and whatnot. I don't really get involved with that side of YouTube. Technically, I could like read the business reports and the quarterly reports, because I actually did study business and management for 3 years, and I have a baccalaureate in business and management, so I understand financial reports and quarterly reports and everything. Most people on YouTube don't, but they read them and make whatever they can of them. But I don't really find that it's helpful or constructive in any way, and I find that the more you get involved in that side, like in the politics, the less enjoyment you get out of it. But I see the effect of it when you go to the store, and the people at the store are purposefully misleading you to buy something that they like. Like, you get a PS4 because it's cool. You should get, I don't know, the Order 1886 because it's awesome and the graphics are great. And it really bothers me when the store clerk, his job is to take my money, greet me if he's polite, or just say nothing if he's not polite, and just make my transaction go as smoothly as possible and shut the hell up. That's his job. But what I don't like is when these, I hate to use the term, but I'm going to use the term because it's easier, when these fanboys are behind the counter trying to influence your decision and trying to push their opinion on you. And that's when I see the effect of what this YouTube maelstrom, or the fanboy phenomenon. When I go to the store and I see that, that's when I realize how detrimental it is, because people are giving deceitful information. These YouTubers, they don't have your best interest in mind. They just want, most of them just want ad revenue and to have an agenda, and most of them actually admit that they're doing this for the money, or because they're bored or insecure and don't know what to do with their time. So they're just doing this because they need attention. But these people give you deceitful information, and they don't really care if about anything really. And I see this in the stores. And one problem that I have is that the stores around me, they don't cover Wii U games. They don't carry Wii U. They don't even have the consoles. They only have PlayStation 4 and they have Xbox One and of course previous generation systems. But I can't find any Wii U games around. And I asked the store clerk, are you going to stock any Wii U games? And he looked at me funny and he said, like, no, why would you want that? That's a dead system. And it's like, when these people working behind the counter actually start believing the BS that goes on in the media, that's when I start to have a problem. And I remember I had that same experience with the Sega Saturn, because everybody liked to dog on the Sega Saturn when it was out, and it was like it was difficult to develop for, and it was shitty, and the games were this and that. I don't actually believe most of that. Until someone proves me wrong, I don't believe that the Sega Saturn was more difficult to develop for than the other systems. It might have not been as documented as well as the other systems, but I don't really believe that BS until someone proves me otherwise. But for me at least, the Wii U is the Sega Saturn of this generation, in that people scoff at it, and the in-crowd mentality sort of makes people think that they're going to be cool if they hate on it, and the media is paid to scoff at it. And once they actually see the system in action and they see what it is actually doing, they kind of shut up, and they kind of see that they're not really right about what everything is telling them, but they won't admit it because that's seen as not cool. So an example of this that I had somewhat recently, a few months ago, was I was home for Christmas, and we had these two new neighbor kids, who walked into the house because we have a traditional Paraguayan Christmas in which neighbors come out after 12 and share a few drinks and whatnot. And they asked me if they have any video games to play, because most people have video games nowadays. They have either PlayStation or something. And I said, sure, I have the Wii U over there. And these kids were like skeptical about it, and the first thing that these kids asked me was, is it in full HD? And that kind of gave me an idea of how detrimental this mentality of this whole marketing campaign to, I don't know really how to define it, but it's fun to hate on one system in a certain generation. Like the Sega Saturn was the system to hate on in that generation, or the GameCube in that generation. But if you actually sit down and objectively play with those systems, you will see that they're all good. They all have their strong points and their weaknesses. But these kids in the in crowd, they want to be hip and they want to be cool. So they are going to hate on this system, and they're going to have that preconception. But I sat down with these kids, and we played Mario Kart 8. And these kids were more impressed by just sitting down and having hands-on time with the system. And now those kids actually own a Wii U. So I think that that whole championing for one system and dogging on the other system, the whole marketing campaign that actually started with George Plimpton in 1980 in National Geographic magazine with the Intellivision is clearly superior advertisement. But that's like the prehistory of things. But this mentality, I think, is very detrimental for the younger generation, because adults are the ones that perpetuate this belief, because the adults are the ones in the media writing and making people believe these things. And young kids will believe what adults tell them because they're young kids, naturally. But, well, I kind of lost my train of thought. What was I was originally talking about? I went on a huge tangent. Oh yeah, how difficult it was to obtain games in in South America. Yeah, sorry about that. Just went on a tangent. But
well,
yeah.
I think I can talk about that a little bit. I mean, this is on your tangent, not on the original original topic only because I've never lived in a third world country, so I don't actually know. But
Yeah.
on the Wii U, um, I know you're a big fan. I know Bruno's a big fan, but Bruno especially knows I'm not a big fan. Um, the Wii U, I have a Wii U, and the games I've played on the Wii U, I like. I I, I have no problem saying like I don't think I have a bad Wii U game. The problem is I have like 5 games, and the problem with the Wii U, I mean, it's not just an image problem. There's an image problem, that's true, but the big problem for me with the Wii U is that there's just no developers for it, and I think both of you, even though I know like you love the Wii U, you could admit that there's not a lot of games coming for it, and there's not a lot of people besides Nintendo developing for it. And for some
Yeah, it's kind
people,
of kind of like the Nintendo 64 situation.
yeah, but even with the Nintendo 64, there was more third-party developers putting games out for it, and like the thing with it is like it is kind of in the position that the Saturn was in, but like the Saturn really did have a lot of third-party support. It had a lot of stuff coming out for it. Um, it it's more in line with something like the Dreamcast in the sense that like the Dreamcast kind of lost all its third-party support in the U.S. anyway after like a really short time, and it was pretty much just Sega putting stuff out for it, and that's kind of what happened with the Dreamcast. It just kind of went off the rails there. And the Wii U, like, I mean, I have no problem saying the Wii U is a good system to use. Like, I like the Wii U system. Like, I like using it. I think every game I've played on it looks pretty good. Um, a lot. I like the controller. I liked the controller more than I thought I would. In the sense that I can play games on the controller. It feels like a good handheld to me for some reason. I just like that. But my huge disappointment with the Wii U is that like a lot of the stuff I wanted on the Wii U got canceled, and a lot of the stuff that's still coming is like not a lot of stuff really. It's just for stuff like even like the PS4 right now, it's not like there's a huge amount of stuff that's coming out really soon. It's not like I'm super hyped for a lot of stuff, but there is a lot of stuff that's been announced that's definitely coming. Whereas the Wii U, like I have 2 games I want that are coming in the Wii U's future that are announced that I know about, and that's it. And it's the kind of thing where it's left in a situation where there's not a lot of stuff for it, and I wish there was, because I think it's a good system, and I think if third parties supported it, it would do a lot better, because there are a lot of interesting things you can do with it. And despite like people complaining like, oh, it's underpowered or whatever, I don't think the power of the console is like gonna generate the quality of the game. I mean, Nintendo themselves, as a developer, even if I don't like their games specifically, I can admit that they're all high quality. And I think, like, those games are definitely a lot of fun for a lot of people. So, it's not the power of the system that really matters about how fun the game is, but it does matter for the system, not the power, but what matters is, like, how many games your system has and how much experience you can get on the system. And like that's where the Wii U fails, in that there's just not a lot of stuff coming for it, and the stuff that does come for it is generally stuff that's not for me, I guess. So yeah, I just wanted to mention that, I guess. I think Bruno maybe has a different take, but because I know he talks about the Wii U on his channel a lot, and I know we've talked about it a bit in the chat.
I think obviously I can see why you're not the biggest fan of the Wii U, because you're not a big fan of a lot of the Nintendo first-party games. But for me, I mean, I'm in heaven basically, because the Wii U. I truly think that the Wii U has been putting like the best Nintendo first-party quality output in a long time. I think Mario Kart 8 is I mean, I'm trying to put my nostalgia, blinds away a little bit, but I think it may be my favorite Mario Kart like ever. And the same thing with Mario 3D World. I think it's my favorite 3D like Mario platformer. And the same thing with Smash Brothers. I mean, I know Melee for the GameCube, it has a huge like cult following and user base, but again, I think the quality of the latest Smash Brothers for the Wii U, it's fantastic. The amount of content, all the unlockables, and just the amount of detail. As a Nintendo fan, I'm like super pleased with the Wii U. But then again, I knew beforehand like that the Wii U was gonna be more of a complementary system, because me personally, I can't see myself playing only on the Wii U for this generation. Like I like my PS4, and it's my go-to system for certain genres and things like that. So for me, the Wii U, it's like the perfect complement, like the PS4 and Wii U combo. For me, it's working wonders. And like I said, I'm a pretty big Nintendo fan, so I like the Marios, I like the the Zeldas, and so for me, the quality of those games are pretty up there when compared to previous like Mario games in other Nintendo consoles. But I can definitely see why you're struggling to like the system, because the third-party support has been abysmal, and it's basically non-existent at this point, other than some Lego games or maybe some cartoon or licensed games. I think that's one of the things that I miss about the Wii. On the Wii, we had games like No More Heroes, Mad World, stuff like Little King's Story, A Boy in His Blood. Games that were, Zack and Wiki, games that were kind of unique to the Wii that we are not seeing on the Wii U. I think perhaps the only game that comes to my mind is Zombie U, which was a launch title, and yeah, at this point the third-party support is basically non-existent. So we're basically relying on the first-party output by Nintendo, which I'm totally fine with that, because I'm a huge fan of them. And like I said, it's my complementary system. I have a PS4, I have a 3DS, I have a Vita, so I'm happy with the system so far. But I can understand why some people may not like the system as much.
Yeah, the thing with that is that, like, again, I can totally admit that Nintendo makes high quality games. They're just not fun for me. But the thing with it is that, man, I really like when the GameCube was out, and the GameCube was an awful seller. Like, it didn't sell anything, and it still had a ton more support than the Wii U. And like, I really liked the GameCube. The GameCube I got the GameCube before it was released in the U.S. I mean, I imported it from Japan because I was so excited for the GameCube. And like, the GameCube didn't really let me down. It had a lot of good third-party stuff. It had like a bunch of Capcom games. It had Resident Evil 4. It had Beautiful Joe. It had
Killer 7.
Yeah, it had all that stuff. And
It had
even the
cyclopean
Wii.
cities of non-Euclidean geometry.
Yes, exactly. That's all that stuff was on the GameCube. In the GameCube, sold really poorly, but still companies supported it. And then the Wii, obviously the Wii kind of took a dive in terms of like third-party support, but at the same time, there was a lot of third-party stuff that came out on the Wii that was worthwhile. I mean, it's stuff that was worth playing, even if you were not a Nintendo fan. You could still get a Wii and enjoy the console enough to have, like, say you got your money's worth out of it at least. But, like, the Wii U took it even to an even lower level of support than the Wii, which is like, the Wii kind of got that almost like a token support because it was such a high seller, despite like third-party games not being high sellers. But like the Wii U, everybody just kind of, after that first like 6 months or so, everybody was just like, nope, we're not making any more Wii U games. And then everybody else, after the big companies jumped out, like the smaller companies just kind of passed it over. So the point we're at now is that, like, you know, that Wii U initial area, it did have some games, like Zombie U is a good game. I like that game. And, you know, there were ports, at least ports coming to the Wii U in the sense that, you know, you could get Batman and Assassin's Creed or whatever, but, like, they've even stopped doing that to the point where, you know, really Nintendo and people Nintendo pay to put games on the Wii U are the only games that are coming to the Wii U. And, you know, like, even then, like, the games I'm looking forward to on the Wii U are both of them are games Nintendo financed. So, you know, it's SMT, Sharp FE, and Devil's Third. So it's kind of, I've got two games I'm looking forward to on my Wii U, and hopefully there's more coming, but it seems incredibly unlikely in the sense that Nintendo has already said, yeah, we got another console coming, and I think, you know, that doesn't give a lot of third parties the, you know, drive to start making a Wii U game. They actually said they're working on their next, the Nintendo NX or whatever it is. They actually announced that. That wasn't like, that's not speculation. That was like actually Nintendo saying it.
Well, they had to they had to throw something at the investors because they're getting really, I guess, antsy.
Yeah, it's really, it is too bad though, because like I said, I think the Wii U is a fine console. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I mean, obviously it's not as powerful as the other consoles, but I don't think that matters, because, you know, in the end, the games aren't about what they look like, they're about how they play. So I think the Wii U is like a horrible, like, result, I think. It's like the worst possible result for the console that they could have had. And I think, like, that's not, you know, blameless on Nintendo's side for, like, a lot of kind of silly things they did with the system, but, you know, it's not just them. I think a lot of people just gave up on it really quickly or didn't even give it a chance.
Yeah, it's kind of scary when you look at the sales for Nintendo consoles, you know, across time. You would see that the NES, if you take out the Wii, which was this phenomenon, or, you know, that sold a lot of over 100 million units worldwide. If you take a look at the sales for the NES, sold the most, and then it went down for the Super Nintendo, and then it went way down for the N64, and then sales went way down for the GameCube, and now the Wii U sales have gone way down from GameCube. So it's almost like this stair-like looking figure, if, you know, when you put it on a graph, and, you know, it's dropping like super quickly. And like I said, if you take out the Wii, which was this standout console for them, but it's kind of scary. I mean, for me personally, because I enjoy their products, I enjoy their games, and you know, the future doesn't bode too well for Nintendo, I'm afraid.
Yeah, I think, like, I mean, really, the beginning of the downfall there is the Nintendo 64, where it was like such a change, and I think, like, the Nintendo 64 took things in a direction way different from the previous generations, I guess. And what happened was, it for lack of a better description, it kind of took things in a more, like, kid-friendly direction, more so than previous. Not that, you know, pretty much all games before, like, that era were kid-friendly, in the sense that the idea that was that games were mostly for kids. But, you know, even then, like, you had more adult-oriented, more, like, grown-up oriented stories and things on the Super Nintendo. But when the N64 came out, it was kind of like everything was very colorful and blocky, and it kind of kid-focused. And I think, like, even though that wasn't true so much for the GameCube, where there was a lot of interesting, like, non-kid-friendly stuff on there, where, I mean, Resident Evil 4, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of stuff, but it had already taken that image. So, right. Like, it kind of drove people away, I think, from the GameCube, despite the GameCube having a lot of really good software and a lot of even like, you know, cross-platform stuff that it was on everything. The GameCube had it. It just still, you know, that image kind of attached itself to Nintendo, even till today, where people just look at Nintendo stuff and think, oh, it's for kids, whereas like it doesn't necessarily have to be. It's just that image has kind of stuck with them since the Nintendo 64 era, I think, and they haven't really been able to escape it. Even though they wanted to try this generation with their initial things before the Wii U, they were saying, yeah, we're going back to the hardcore, and then like after like the first 6 months, that was gone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is kind of true. I mean, you know, me personally, I didn't care for the kid image. Like, I enjoyed like platformers, for example. So I was in heaven during the Nintendo 64 era. You know, playing all the Mario 64s, and I also enjoyed the rare platformers. But at the same time, I enjoyed the output from the Sony, you know, the Sony PlayStation, which was, you know, the Resident Evil, Silent Hills, Metal Gear Solid, which were, you know, at the time it was different. You know, it really catered towards a more like adult audience. So I think you're right. I mean, the PlayStation took like a big chunk of that market that was oriented towards, you know, adult people, I guess.
Yeah, well, I mean, just look at the things that, like, look at the difference in the software library between the N64 and the Super Nintendo. And you can, like, already see that there's, like, kind of a huge difference in focus, in the sense that, I mean, is there a game on the Super Nintendo, I mean, on the N64, that you can even think of that's on the same level as, in terms of, like, maturity and story and whatever, as even Earthbound or Chrono Trigger or something like Final Fantasy VI, where it's like got a moving story, like a story that could actually affect you? I mean,
I know one, but it's not very popular. It's Eiding Chronicles of First Mage. I think Dungeons and Dragons fans wrote that story because it's so deep and so immersive. And it's a story that I've never seen anybody else go so deep into the psyche of the characters as they do in Eiding Chronicles of First Mage. But the problem with that game is it came out so late. It came out in like 2001, and it had a very low print run, so very few people got the chance to play that game.
yeah, well, like, the thing with that is that even with like thinking of the overall libraries, you could name one game. Could you think of any more? Like maybe Resident Evil 2. But you know, it was a port, and it's not like this the kind of same kind of library, I guess, the same kind of variety in library and the same kind of level of tones, I think, for games. Just kind of really got small in the N64 era, and like Nintendo has had a real hard time, I think, escaping that kind of image from then on. Because even though I was a kid when Nintendo was out or whatever, like, it wasn't necessarily viewed as like games for kids on the Nintendo. My uncle, who was a full-grown adult at that point, had a Nintendo himself, and he just played sports games or whatever. But it wasn't like something that was for kids in that sense. But like once you get to N64, it just kind of has that image. Even though, like, some of the most popular games are stuff like GoldenEye.
Right.
Yeah, it was a result of market forces and advertising, and really a lot of little factors that added up to that. Now, me personally, like right now, I have 3 systems with me. I have the Sega Saturn, because I have to have a Sega Saturn with me wherever I am in the world. This is actually my 4th Sega Saturn, but yeah, I'm weird like that. I have my PS Vita with me, which is probably my favorite and my main handheld of this generation. And there's so many games coming out for PS Vita, I can't keep up with all of them. There are like 22 games that I want that are coming either this year or next year. So that little system is unstoppable. and I have the Wii U with me. And the Wii U makes me feel like a teenager again. It kind of makes me remember when I was 13 and I got my Sega Saturn and I fought tooth and nail to save up and get that Sega Saturn with Panzer Dragoon. And it wasn't cheap, but let me tell you, I still have that Sega Saturn and I still play it and it still works and it's still my favorite system. And I only have, honestly, I only have two complaints about the Wii U. The first one is that they usually don't give you a game manual, which I think is kind of wrong, because if you remember the manuals for like Legend of Zelda, the original Legend of Zelda, or Legend of Zelda Adventure of Link, or any of the game manuals back then, those things were really wonderful things to look at. They were pieces of art. They had backstory, artwork, and whatnot, and I can understand like trying to cut corners and costs but whatnot, but that's one thing that I really miss is those game manuals. And the second
Even if
problem
you
that
go
I have,
Oh,
yes,
sorry. I just quickly gonna say that even when you go back to the Wii games, they had like big, like fat manuals, which is not too long ago. So it is a shame that they went away with those for this generation.
yes. And the second problem that I have with some of the games, not all of them, and I'm gonna coin a term here, and you'll have to excuse my dirtiness, but my problem is ownership insecurity. Now, what do I mean with ownership insecurity? Let me illustrate this a little bit. I bought a Sega Saturn a few months ago when I actually got a small television, like a small Hitachi TV for my dorm room, and I bought a copy of a stall for the Sega Saturn. Now, Astal is an excellent game. It's a 2D platformer, hand-drawn. It's an amazing game. And I have that game with me right here, and I feel that I really own this game. I bought it, and it's my game. Now, when I had Mario Kart 8, I bought Mario Kart 8. I paid $75 for Mario Kart 8, and I got it in the first week of release. But if somebody asked me back then, do you really own Mario Kart 8? And to be perfectly honest, I feel that I did not really own that game, because after the initial launch and the initial craze, they came out with new tracks and new downloadable content, and I feel like that $75 that I paid, I still felt like I didn't own that game. And that's something that I don't feel when I buy something on the Saturn or the GameCube or other systems, in which you might pay a high price initially, but you feel that you really have that game, that you own it and it's yours. And I don't feel that with the downloadable content that's coming out for newer games, because we were actually talking a little bit about this in the first Humblecast, you and I, Joe, that personally, I think that downloadable content, whether it's on disk or additional, is not really good. It's kind of wrong, because I see it like 10 years from now, when my Wii U doesn't function anymore and I have to get a new one, and I have to download those downloadable contents again. But will that be there when I get my new system? And will those servers be up? And will I actually own all that content that I paid for? And my guess is that I won't, because I already lost downloadable content, like on PlayStation Network and on the WiiWare service. There were games that were taken down, and like little items that were taken down from those services that technically I still own the rights to, because I paid for them, or at least I got them in like a little voucher and whatnot. But I can't get them anymore because the servers were taken down. So that's one problem that I have with newer games that have downloadable add-on content. That I don't feel that I actually own the game. I feel that I pay a high price for an admission, and then I have to pay again if I actually want to own more of the game. And I think by the end of the generation, you're going to be paying more than $100 for one game, and I think that is wrong. No matter how you spin it, I don't like that. So that's my take on the situation.
I think that's pretty solid. I mean, um, there. I think like a lot of people complain about like Game of the Year editions or whatever, but I kind of feel like those are the best versions of any game to get, only because like they do a lot of times do contain all the DLC on the disc, and you know I can definitely say I'm guilty of buying those solely to get DLC on the disc instead of buying the DLC via download, and it does make you feel a bit like a lot of the stuff you're buying right now is going to be in part or in some cases in whole completely lost. Whereas, like, for example, one of my favorite games of last generation is Fallout 3, and I'm thinking of Fallout 3 because it has a lot of DLC, like a lot of content that's DLC that came out, way after the game was released. But it's not insignificant. There are huge stories in there. There are big parts of like the adventure kind of in those DLC packs. And if there wasn't that kind of Game of the Year edition of Fallout 3, it would be a real loss, I think, in 10 years if you couldn't go back and play that again and get the extra content. There's like all types of extra areas and stories and maps and weapons and all types of stuff going on in that game due to the DLC that I think if you're not going to be able to have it on disc, you're not going to be able to access. Like you're saying, like I can put in a Sega Saturn game right now and get all the content I was meant to get originally, whereas I doubt I'll be able to do that in 20 years from now. Am I going to be able to pop a game in my PS4 and get all the intended content, without being able to connect to PSN, which will probably not exist in 20 years.
Yeah, it kind of makes you feel like an insecurity. Like, do you actually own this game, or do they still own it, or are you paying a subscription, or will you? You know what I mean. You don't really feel like you own what you pay for. Ultimately.
Yeah, that's like a lot of my opposition to stuff like Steam on the PC. As you might know or might not know, I guess, I refuse to use Steam on the PC specifically because it's directly connected to Valve, the company, and when they sell your games, your games are connected to the Steam shell. It's essentially a DRM shell for your games. Steam is, and by using it, you're kind of tying those games to an account held by Valve, and Valve can, for whatever reason, delete your account. I mean, somebody could get on your account by accident or whatever and start like harassing people or whatever, and your whole account could get deleted and you'd lose all those games. Or Valve could suddenly go out of business, and then what happens to your library of Steam games? They're gone. I mean, you'll have no way to access them because they require the Steam shell for DRM. And so, like, whenever I buy stuff on the PC, I only buy stuff through Good Old Games because it's all DRM free, and it doesn't require like any type of authentication from the company. So, it's still all digital, but at least it's I can copy those files and back them up myself. And I think that's the difference to me between like the previous generations of games like the Sega Saturn or current generation of games like the PS4 or even the Wii U in some cases, where there's just so much stuff that's downloadable, even updates that will fix game-breaking bugs and stuff. That kind of stuff like you won't be able to get in 20 years. Like some games, even though you have the entire thing on the disc, are still going to be unplayable because you can't get the patch that fixes like some kind of horrible break in the game. And that it's sad overall. I think it's a it's a negative thing for people who care about games in the future, and playing those games again later on. And like, it's weird to even think about it because 20 years ago or 30 years ago or whatever, when you're playing NES games, it's not. I wasn't ever thinking like, well, I'm going to be playing this in 20 years, but it's happened. I'm still playing that stuff, and other people are too. So it's not unrealistic to think about the current games now in that same sense, because I wouldn't necessarily say I'm going to be playing these same games in 20 years, but I might be, because I am still playing those other ones. So it is kind of an important point to think about in terms of like having a realistic archive of these games you're playing.
Yes. Well, it's quite a situation. But to make sure we don't end on a low note, I'd like to know from May to maybe the end of the year or next year, I'd like to know if you guys have any games that you're looking forward that are going to be released. And I have quite a list over here, so I'm going to leave mine for last. But Bruno, do you have anything you're looking forward to in particular?
Yes, I was looking forward to Zelda U, but that obviously got pushed back.
Wait, I just want to ask you a question about that. Do you think it's going to come out on the Wii U?
Yes, I think so. Yes.
Do you think it's going to come out on the Wii U and whatever Nintendo is cooking up for their next system? Do you think it'll be like a kind of GameCube and Wii release of Twilight Princess? Do you think it's going to do that? Because why I'm asking this is because Nintendo at that same time, they did say like, oh, we got our new system in the works, and then they also delayed Zelda like an entire year or whatever. So it's the kind of thing where the kind of matching of those things makes me wonder, like, are they going to actually put it out on the Wii U, or is it just going to be like the Wii U is going to be this kind of like afterthought to the real show on the next system? Like, it's the kind of thing where people always complain Nintendo should launch with a Zelda game, and then like, it makes me think like, oh, we got a new system coming. Oh, Zelda was delayed a year. It seems like a weird coincidence to me, and I was wondering if you guys thought the same kind of thing, or if you just thought like totally unrelated.
I think the Zelda U delay may be due to two reasons. One of them is Nintendo not having a lot of like expertise in the. I mean, I think they're still learning as far as HD development, and it's one of the reasons why I think games like Pikmin 3 got delayed. They were supposed to be launched, on the launch window or whatever. So I think they're still getting things sorted out as far as HD development. They're finding out that it's a little bit more difficult, and supposedly Zelda U is going to be a very ambitious game, kind of like a Skyrim type of very big open world game where you can do anything you want, or you can tackle dungeons in any order you decide to. So I think that could be one reason that Nintendo is still trying to figure that out. And another reason I think is the fact that what we were talking about earlier, that the Wii U really doesn't have a whole lot of support right now, so they really have to space out their releases. And I guess they're gonna have the this year covered with games like Xenoblade X and Yoshi's Woolly World and games like that. They're gonna use those to like cover this year, and then leave Zelda U as one of the heavyweights for the for next year. But I don't think. I mean, it's hard to tell if they're kind of thinking about putting Zelda U on the new console, because from what I've heard, I mean, these are rumors, obviously, but I think Nintendo's trying to do maybe some kind of handheld / like console hybrid, where that's what I've been hearing. So I'm not sure if that's true or not, but it kind of makes sense though, because handhelds have been Nintendo's stronghold for ever since the Game Boy, really, and now that they're getting into the mobile market, a little bit. I think it made sense for them to make some kind of hybrid console, but at the same time, if they do that, it may not be as powerful to run a game like Zelda U. I don't know. I truly think that it's going to be a Wii U exclusive, but who knows?
Me personally, I don't believe that they're going to bring out a new home system, home console anytime soon. Just looking at their history, like predicting what Nintendo's going to do is kind of like predicting the weather. You really don't know what to expect, but you can make an educated guess. And my guess is that whatever they're working on now is actually going to be a portable system, simply because of their pattern. Like NES was, well, actually the Game & Watch first, then the NES, Game Boy, Super Nintendo, Game Boy Color, Nintendo 64 and GameCube came after, Nintendo DS, Nintendo Wii, 3DS, Wii U, and I think they're going to be working on a portable if they are actually working on a new system to launch within the next 2 years. But I don't believe that they're going to bring a home console anytime soon, simply because I think it would be a little too soon. And one thing that Nintendo has always had, even if their systems don't perform as well as the competition, they never abandoned a home console before, which is one of the things that a lot of people learn from Sega America, not Sega Japan, but I don't know, maybe also to a certain extent. But Sega America gave up on the Saturn, and they kind of killed it themselves. And that actually kills consumer confidence when you yourself don't have confidence in your system. And that's one thing that Nintendo has never done, regardless of how the market swayed. They never abandoned a system. They always gave their customers what their customers wanted. And that, as far as I know, of course, I don't really get into the newsy sort of predicting what they're going to do, because I would rather wait and see and be surprised by what they do. So that's my guess so far. So anyway, I hope that answered your question.
Okay, yeah, Bruno, go back. Games you're looking forward to.
Xenoblade X, Yoshi's Woolly World. I think it's, based on what I've seen so far, the art direction in that game, it's like the best looking game so far that I've seen out of this new generation. Like, it looks so good. I don't know, the art direction is fantastic on that game, so I'm looking forward to that. Also the Fatal Frame game, that it's gonna be localized, which I know you enjoyed it, Joe.
Yeah, it was good.
As far as the PS4, it's kind of weird because a lot of the big name titles got pushed back to 2016, like Uncharted 4, and it's a whole lot of HD remasters coming out. So there's not a whole lot that I'm looking forward. I think there's some kind of like survival horror game maybe that kind of looks interesting called Until Dawn. That kind of looks interesting, but after what happened with the Order 1886, I'm kind of weary of the first-party output by Sony. Like, I'm not necessarily eager to to buy those games on day one unless I really know I'm gonna enjoy them. But The Witcher 3 is another one coming out in a few days that it's looking pretty interesting. But I think I'm gonna wait for the price to come down, because that's what's happening lately here. You wait 2, 3, 4 months and the prices are coming down so quickly. So yeah, I think those are a few of the games that I'm interested.
Awesome.
Oh, sorry, and Star Fox U, whatever that may be. Hopefully it's not what I'm thinking it will be, because Miyamoto was saying that you were gonna use like the gamepad to control the the R-wing. Hopefully it's a true successor to Star Fox 64, which is one of my all-time favorite games. So that's another one I'm looking forward the most. Supposedly it's coming out this year, They haven't delayed it yet, so fingers crossed.
What about you, Joe?
Let's see. This year, well, I have some stuff on pretty much every system that I'm looking forward to. I don't have an Xbox One yet, but I really want that Agito Cross Tatsunoko game, which is like a game nobody besides me wants. But
that actually looks pretty good, pretty fun.
It's like an underground base simulator. It's like an in-depth simulation game that somehow involves Tatsunoko characters as opposed to Kamen Riders that it did last time. It's like essentially a PS1 game. It looks like a PS1 game almost. But you know, I'm hoping it actually gets ported to the PS4 because a lot of the stuff I was looking forward to on the Xbox One isn't materializing anymore, or is in question, like Phantom Dust, and yeah, so. But that game is probably my #1 game on the Xbox One that's supposed to come out, but I doubt I'll have an Xbox One anytime soon. The PS4, though, there's, I guess that's coming out soon. I think that Mad Max game is coming in the fall. I'm pretty excited about that because I'm a huge Mad Max fan, and it's made by the people who did Just Cause, and those games were actually pretty good quality, so Just Cause in a Mad Max world sounds pretty awesome. Persona 5 obviously will be out sometime this year. For me at least. I don't know if it's coming out in the US, but Persona 5. Again, those two Wii U games, Devil's Third and what's Sharp FE. Wow, lots of stuff on the Vita, I guess, too. There's a Lovecraftian kind of first-person dungeon crawler coming out by Experience. And I don't know if it's actually by Experience. It's made by Kadokawa Games, though, so I assume it's probably Experience doing the development that they announced last year, but they haven't announced the title for it yet, so who knows if it's actually going to come. Persona Dancing All Night, I'm going to get. Ray Gigant also on the Vita. Tokyo Xanadu in the fall. That's the long-awaited kind of revival of the Xanadu series. What else? Fire Emblem If is coming next month, I think. That's going to be pretty awesome, I think.
Already?
Oh, yeah, it's coming in Japan. It's like not until 2016 for the US, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But it's next month in Japan. So that should be awesome.
Were you able to get that collector's edition pre-order that you were talking about?
I actually have the collector's edition pre-ordered. It's sold out immediately, apparently, but I pre-ordered mine like right when I saw the announcement for the game. So, because I knew it was going to sell out, and it would be the only way to get like the edition with the physical copies on both without separately buying both, I guess. So, yeah, I got the special edition. And Langrisser is coming, I think, at the end of this month, the new Langrisser. Or maybe it's the end of July, I don't remember. And Project Steam, or what is it? Is Codename Steam?
Mm-hmm.
It's already out in the US, but it's coming out in Japan in like a week or two. Did you play that, Bruno, by the way?
I played the demo and I enjoyed it, but I haven't bought it yet. I don't know. I'm waiting for some kind of price drop. I have way too many games that I'm playing right now, so the demo was fun. I have to admit that the art direction didn't really grab me, but the gameplay is pretty fun. It's kind of like a mixture of like XCOM with like strategy. I guess it has that Fire Emblem flair to it, also added to it. But yeah, I'll get it in eventually.
Yeah, I didn't play the demo, even though there is a demo. I just figured that like I'd rather just go into it blind, fresh, I guess. because I trust intelligent systems to give me a good strategy game, and I know some of the reviews weren't that great, but like I don't really care what reviewers say. I think like I would rather trust the pedigree of the company because they rarely let me down. So
I think the most I think people were complaining that it's way like too difficult. I think that's what the reviewers were saying, that the game is too hard. So,
oh well,
Oh,
okay.
God.
Well, that sounds like I'll like it even more.
It's a whole Mega Man 9 situation all over again.
Man, that I tend to like games that reviewers think are too hard. I think that I don't know. This is a totally different topic, but I think when people say a game is hard, like I think it means that I'm going to have to go into the game and think about it instead of just kind of mindlessly go at it. You know, and there are games that you can mindlessly go at that are fun. Dynasty Warriors games are a good example of that. You know, they're never too hard. You just kind of mindlessly hack and slash, and it's fun. But like, you know, when I go into something like, for example, Bloodborne is like, notoriously a kind of difficult series, I guess, in the Soul series or whatever. And you know, you have to go into those kind of with a thought process. You can't just kind of mindlessly go into it. You have to really analyze how to play the game and kind of care about stats and care about positioning and care about a lot of stuff that you don't normally have to care about in less kind of forgiving games, I guess. And when someone describes a game as difficult, it makes me think like not difficult for difficulty's sake, but difficult in a way that like you have to understand the mechanics of the game and you have to kind of actually strategize in a strategy game. Oh my god. That kind of thing, like that, you know, that kind of attracts me to games more instead of a game where I can like get through it relatively easily, even if it's, you know, I think games like Fire Emblem in the kind of hardcore mode where your character's permadeath and stuff like that, it makes you really have to learn how to play the game. You have to learn who works well together, what units attack what units, which units are good and which units are bad for certain units, what positioning is good, how far can things move, how can they not move. It makes you have to really think about that stuff to make the game work and not lose all your characters. And I think if Codename Steam has that kind of difficulty, then I think like I'm gonna really like it. You know, there are kind of difficulty that's not fun, where it's just like
broken.
Yeah, it's broken
Cheap.
or something, or it's cheap. That kind of difficulty is not fun for probably anybody. But I think Intelligent Systems is a developer that I can't think of anything they've done that is, you know, hard because it's cheap. So I think I'm pretty excited for that. And
How do you feel about like the RNG system in the Fire Emblem games? Because a lot of people seem to like criticize the the random generated attacks by the AI.
You know, there is a kind of, I mean, it is random number generated, but that's how RPGs are. I mean, there are, I don't know if you've ever played like a pen and paper RPG like Dungeons and Dragons or something, but when I think of RPGs, like why an RPG is an RPG, like I know a lot of people have these kind of criteria for like, how is this game an RPG? It's why there's like an argument if Zelda is an RPG or not. And I think like for me, there is a real kind of distinction between an RPG and a game with RPG elements. And the one huge distinction I can think of is are your characters and their damage and the things that happen in the game stat-based or skill-based? And it could be both, but the stat-based part is really important because that's how RPGs work. Everything is stat-based. If you don't have stats and you don't have your different kinds of, even if they're invisible, if you don't have that, it's not an RPG. It doesn't happen. You have to have that. Like for example, I can give you a good example of what I'm talking about. In The Legend of Zelda, one hit will always do the same amount of damage to one enemy. So, like, if you're fighting an Octorok with your regular sword, it will always do the same amount of damage every time you hit it. So those things will take a certain amount of hits every time. If you upgrade the sword, that certain amount will change, but it'll never be like with the same sword you'll do. Sometimes it'll take 2, sometimes it'll take 3. That never happens because it's not stat-based. It's like a set number-based. Whereas, like, in something like Fire Emblem, there's always a chance to miss. There's always a chance for a critical. There's always a chance that, like, you'll do 16 points of damage on one hit, and the next hit on the very same enemy with the very same weapon will do 15. There's like a different type of there's a hidden kind of calculations going on in the background there. It's based on stats of the character, stats of weapons, stats of all this stuff going on. It's really complicated in the background, and I think that's what really is like one of the main things that happens with RPGs that doesn't happen in other games. It's one of the defining characteristics of an RPG.
Yeah, I mean, pretty well explained. Yeah, I was just wondering your thoughts because I know some people don't seem to, I guess, like the fact that some of the attacks are randomly generated. But I guess that's part of the charm of the.
I mean, it's what makes an RPG an RPG. If you play Dungeons and Dragons, like, you can do things that you can't normally do if you're lucky enough. It's the kind of thing where, like, I mean, we had a situation in a role-playing experience, like in a Dungeons and Dragons game, where, like, one of the characters had to roll like if you roll a 20 on a D20 roll in Dungeons and Dragons, you automatically succeed, no matter what, even if it's something like you couldn't normally do. If you get the 20 roll, you can succeed and you win. You get it. So what happens is, like, we had a situation where someone had to roll a 20 or they would die. It was like they had to roll the 20 or they just would lose and die. And the person rolled a 20 twice in a row, so they totally won this crazy battle they had no chance to win. And, like,
what are the odds?
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like it's a really low odds thing, but that's how RPGs work. That's what makes them great. There is this kind of luck aspect built into the game where it's stat-based, and sometimes, no matter what, those stats are either gonna come up in your favor or not. And when you're playing Fire Emblem in something, you have your awesome character, and then suddenly, like, random dude number 3 on the map shows up and crits you, and you die. Like, It sucks. It's awful, but that's the way the game works. You should expect that to happen because it's kind of built into RPGs. You can't ever guess when a crit is going to happen because it's based on a random number generator. So, and that goes for pen and paper RPGs, and it should go for pretty much any RPG. It's just that's how things work. And I think, like, if it didn't work that way, it would take away a lot of the kind of aspects that makes the game an RPG. So I understand why people would complain. I just think, you're complaining about one of the key elements of the genre, and maybe RPGs aren't for you. It's the only thing I can think of.
Yeah, if you're not having fun with the game, play a different game is my rule of thumb. Yeah, well, I'm going to quickly go through a few games that I'm looking forward to that I definitely will be getting.
Yeah, I'm interested to hear your list of Vita games, because you have probably even more than I do, and
well, I'm not going to be able to get all the Vita games that I want because there are just too many of them, and I just won't be able to get them all. But eventually, I will get them. But with me right now, I have my Wii U and my PS Vita, and I have my hands full with those two. For the Wii U, I'm looking forward to Rodea the Sky Soldier, which is from Kadokawa Games and is published by Nipponichi Software in the United States and in the West. And Rodea the Sky Soldier looks really fun, and it kind of reminds me of... It feels like a Nintendo 64 game to me. And I really like that style of game. I love the Nintendo 64. It's it is my favorite cartridge-based system. And I like the style and the art style of those games. And Rodea the Sky Soldier, the artwork and the art style and the trailer that I looked really fun. And Rodea the Sky Soldier will also include the unreleased Wii game, which I was kind of listening to the rumors about that game, kind of following it, but then suddenly everyone went quiet, and I assumed the game was cancelled. But I guess they transferred it to the Wii U instead of the Wii. So that's one game that I will pick up, Rodea the Sky Soldier.
I actually have that one too. I forgot to mention.
That looks amazing. The second one, of course, is
Rodea is it's like Knights. If you've
it does look like Knights.
It plays a bit like Knights.
Definitely.
It's not unlike Knights in a lot of ways, and if you like Knights, I think you'll like Rodea. I initially had Rodea pre-ordered, but I canceled the order because overall after seeing the gameplay, I kind of was thinking I'm probably not going to enjoy this as much as I thought I was going to, and I just didn't buy it. And I figured once it gets cheap, I might pick it up, but I haven't played. I didn't buy it originally when it came out, so I'll wait for you guys to tell me how good or not good it is.
Yeah. Of course, I'm looking forward to Xenoblade Chronicles X, but I insist that they should have just called that Xenogears 2. Unfortunately, they can't. But that's basically where it is. If you look at the characters, the story, the way the game sort of begins, it's Xenogears 2. But whatever. I'm definitely looking forward to that game. Any game, and you probably know this about me if you watch my channel for any length of time, if you put a giant robot on the cover of the game, I'm sold. I'm buying it. So that's how I go. Giant robots. I'm also looking forward to Fatal Frame, Project Zero, and that looks like a really fun game. And I have Crimson Butterfly on the Xbox, and I really love that game. And really looking forward to Fatal Frame. Yoshi's Woolly World also, because it looks like a really fun platformer. And I come from the SNES and the NES and the Sega Saturn to a certain extent, and I love platformers. It's one of my favorite, probably my favorite kind of game are platformers. And it looks like a traditional platformer in the Yoshi vein, in which there's more exploration, and you can uncover little things here and there. And the art style is unbelievably good. I really love the art style for Yoshi's Woolly World. I'm also looking forward to Devil's Third, which looks like a really fun, sort of violent, over-the-top game, and I really like that games that don't take themselves too seriously, so to say. They're just super violent and over-the-top and throwing F-bombs here and there, and I'm really looking forward to that. It looks like it's going to be a good time. Okay, on the plucky little PS Vita, I'm really looking forward to Chronos Materia from Gust, and I've had that pre-ordered since 2013, actually, so I hope that, yeah, I'm really looking forward to that. Code Realize Guardian of Rebirth from Axis Games is also coming out, and I really want to get my hands on that game. I like those sort of visual novel sort of games that you don't actually play them very much, but you get a really good story. Also, Dungeon Travelers 2, the Royal Library and the Monster Seal looks really fun. And I like those colorful games with sort of a watercolor art style.
I've heard that game is really fun. It's like a port of the PSP one.
Yes, exactly.
the PSP one it's been recommended to me a bunch of times, but I still haven't gotten around to playing it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I heard it was a
Definitely.
really good dungeon crawler. So if anyone is interested in dungeon crawlers with lots of anime girls, I guess that game is apparently a really good one.
Yep. And speaking of dungeon crawlers with lots of anime girls, Moedo Chronicle just came out like 2 days ago, and it's in the mail. I haven't gotten it yet, but I'm going to be getting that one too. And I think I talked about that last week actually, about those sort
You'll
of.
have to tell me how that is, because as long as it's been out for a long time here, but the Vita masturbation or whatever you have to do to rub the cards or whatever, that totally puts me off.
Yeah.
It's the kind of thing where, like, usually when I'm playing my Vita, I always bring it on the train and bring it to work, and I'm like, can't really do that at work. It's gonna look too conspicuous.
Yeah. Not
So it's the kind
really
of thing
something you
where
can
it's you'll have to tell me how it is and if I should secretly play it at home or not.
do. I love those, goofy, politically incorrect humor in those games. It just makes me laugh.
Have you
But
played? Did you play the other one in that series, the Monster Mon piece?
I didn't, unfortunately. I want to get my hands on it, but importing it it's kind of complicated in my current location. But eventually I'll get around to
You
it.
can always download the US version.
Yeah, I'm not much into downloading, but
Yeah, I know how much you love your
yeah.
downloading downloadable games.
Yeah, totally on board of that train. Yeah. Anyway, X-Blaze Lost Memories, which is the sequel to X-Blaze Code Embryo. I'm also looking forward to that. And there are 3 games in the Hyperdimension Neptunia series that I'm looking forward to. One of them is already out, which is Hyper Devotion Noir, which is a strategy game. And I haven't gotten my hands on that yet, but I definitely will.
I've seen
There's
a
Hyperdimension.
bit of that on Playongo's channel, and
Yeah.
he really enjoyed that game. He showed a bit of gameplay and talked about how much he liked it, so it's probably pretty good. He has generally good opinions about those types of games, so it should be a good one.
I love those games. They are kind of lower budget games in that they're not really graphically demanding, but they're just so fun. I really like them. There's Hyperdimension Neptunia Rebirth 3 V Generation is also coming out, and it's compatible with Vita TV, which is a plus for me. And Hyperdimension Neptunia U Action Unleashed, which is going to come out later this year also. So overall, I have my hands full with Wii U and PS Vita. It's really good.
Surprisingly, that Hyperdimension Neptunia U is not a Wii U game.
Yeah, that's weird. Weird title.
It's weird because it has the U in the name, so you'd expect it to be a Wii U game, but nope, not a Wii U game.
Yeah, not the kind of game that I would expect to come out on the Wii U. That seems more. It really seems more like a PlayStation title, the Japanese sort of
Yeah, definitely.
RPG. Yeah. Well, so do we have any questions from the audience?
We have a couple.
Okie dokie.
Someone asked for PSP recommendations. That's Kishoro guy again, way in the beginning. So
Kishoro, yeah.
PSP recommendations. You guys have any?
Well, I would recommend Jeanne d'Arc. Mine are a little bit cliche, but I'll say them anyway. Jeanne d'Arc, Valkyria Chronicles 2, if you can find that. Ultimate Ghosts and Goblins, which is a really good one. And I know you're in England, Kishoro guys, so I'm not sure if you're bilingual or not, but there's a bunch of Japanese-only games that I would recommend, but if the language barrier is going to be a problem, then it's... I don't know. You'd have to get, like, PM me or something in order to get a better recommendation. But yeah, those three for the moment. So, Bruno?
I'm gonna pass on this one. Both the DS and the PSP like generation, I completely skipped. I'm probably one of the only like
Shame for shame.
I'm probably one of the I'm probably the only like Nintendo like guy that never owned a DS. At the time I was in college and very little time for gaming. All I had back then was a Wii on my dorm room, and even then, I
Yeah.
hardly played the damn thing. So
I
I'm
know how
gonna
that
pass on
goes.
that.
Yeah. Joe, this is your bread and butter.
Wow, PSP. I have so many PSP recommendations that I don't even know where to start. It's hard to tell because I don't know what people have already played, but and plus
Well,
like
can I
oh, go
take
ahead.
over this? Kishoro guy, look at X Corn Muffin X PSP collection videos on his channel and look at those lists that he has there. And if you find anything interesting, then go ahead and give it a whirl. Is
I
that
thought
Yeah,
you were
is
gonna
that all right?
say. I thought you were gonna say look up the Metal Jesus Rocks Hidden Gems video.
close enough.
I'm not really familiar with Metal Jesus, so I don't really know. So
Lots of hidden gems.
The entire library.
The entire library of the PSP. It's a hidden gem.
yeah. So any other questions?
Let me look. Hold. What do you think of Star Tropics on the NES?
I love Star Tropics on the NES, but it's a really, really quirky game, and I think it is kind of a precursor to Earthbound, not so much in the play style, but in that sort of quirkiness, and it's got some text and some references there that are, if you look a little bit deeper into them, they're kind of disturbing, and it's a really, really good game. I like Star Tropics quite a bit.
Nice. Bruno, have you ever played Star Tropics?
I remember. Is that the one that it's like an adventure game from over the top, like over the top
Yeah,
view, kind of like a Zelda
it is
point
like
of
a
view?
it's like a top-down kind
Yeah,
of.
I played it, but for like an hour or two at a friend's house. Can't
Yeah,
really
see,
compare.
I haven't played it. I mean, I rented it originally way back in the NES days, and I haven't played it since then. So it's been like 25 years or something. I don't even know. It's been a long time since I've even touched Star Tropics, so I honestly don't remember a lot about it. Um, I only remember the map with the kind of dancing palm trees on it. Beyond
Yeah.
that, like I can't think of much more for Star Tropics. I clearly remember the box for the game though, but I don't remember playing much of it though. I probably played it for a single weekend 25 years ago. So probably more than that now.
One thing I will say, it's a very 90s game. So if you grew up in that time period, you will kind of get the humor of Star Tropics. So, anything else?
Let's see. Hmm. Not question-wise. There doesn't appear to be anything question-wise, but there are some comments about
Mm-hmm.
things. So Kishiro guy has been giving lots of commentary throughout that we haven't been mentioning, but he did mention that he had predictions for games that would get expensive, and there's good ones on there. Folklore on the PS3, Fairy Fencer F, which he thanks you for introducing him to the title.
Oh, you're welcome, Kishoro guy.
Ghost Trick on the DS, Teresia on the DS, Dodonpachi Resurrection Deluxe on the 360, Crush
That's
on the
already
PSP.
expensive.
Is it?
Yes.
Did it? Because I thought that that when that game was released in Europe, like it got really cheap.
I've seen it for now. Granted, I haven't looked at it in several months, but I actually did wanted to get one of those copies for my brother, and it was very like in euros, it was really expensive, so I kind of passed on it. But it can be sort of a up and down sort of deal, so I'd
And
have to check.
the last one he mentioned was Captain Rainbow on the Wii. Um,
Yes.
I want to say that game is never going to get expensive. It was like they produced a lot of them, and it was like a horrible flop in Japan. So I just want to say I got my copy for like $1.
Wow.
There's like no way it's going to be an expensive game in the future. The last one, he also mentioned Skycrawlers in a.
Oh, that's Skycrawlers is really good. I love that game.
And for games he was looking forward to, Danganronpa 3. Is that coming? Is that even announced?
Well, I don't know how, but I kind of guessed you would be looking forward to that, Kishoro guy. Your avatar kind of, got me a hint. But
Yeah.
Monokuma, yeah.
And he was also Rodea the Sky Soldier for you, too.
Yes. Great.
Let me see. I'll refresh the comments just in case nothing showed up. So, all right. I guess that's the end of our comments.
Great. Well, really great discussion on pretty much every topic, guys. Thank you very much for showing up. Do you have any closing comments? Oh, yeah.
Joe has to answer a question from the first episode still.
Oh,
yes.
Who I wanted to? Okay, I figured out the question. I figured out the answer. Perfect. Now that Bruno is here. The thing that I would give the Hyakuretsuken to. It's the entire concept of the amiibo. There you go. Boom! Shots fired.
That's a good one.
Oh, that's a good one. Omae wa mou shindeiru.
Yeah, it's a hard question though because,
Yeah, I need like a counter, like 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and the very black and censored explosion of the body parts.
Man, yeah. That's still the coolest move, I think, in an anime.
It is. Definitely. Well, I guess then we can close this Humblecast by saying that thank you very much for participating, everyone who has been here. And there's one thing that I want to tell every one of my watchers and viewers is that it's up to you to make the difference and to seek the truth. Never take anything at face value. And if you don't have the means to know the truth because you lack the knowledge or you don't have the ways to find out, seek someone who does. And never follow the flow simply because everybody else is doing it. And there's an old Cartoon Network cartoon called Sheep in the Big City. Do you remember?
No.
Well, there was one line, it's actually a parody of society, and it's one line in a marketing campaign in that cartoon that I love. And it was, everyone else is doing it, and that was the slogan for a product. So if everyone else is doing it, like Bugs Bunny said, if everyone else is jumping off a cliff, would you go too? I hope not. So, with me tonight have been my unlikely but loyal band of misfits. Thank you very much, Pirates of Darkwater. Joe from X-Corn Muffin X.
Yes, thanks for listening, everybody, and I guess we'll be back eventually at some point, whenever there's time, I guess.
And coming to you in full Mode-7, Bruno from SNES Mapper.
Yeah, thank you so much for the invite, guys. I had a really good time and really fun listening to you guys. So looking forward for future episodes. Hopefully, they're more frequent.
Awesome. Well, everybody, to quote Dudley Moore, until then, this is your pal, Spin. Spin you later.